Today we're going to compare the Arai Quantic and the Shoei NXR2, what I can only describe as the Messi versus Ronaldo of sports drawing lids. Off with a brief little history on both these Japanese motorcycle helmets. Arai was founded in 1926 by Hirotake Arai, and actually they started off as a hat making business which later transitioned into the helmet production business as well. Whereas Shoei has always been a corporation and was founded in 1958 by Itaro Kamata. Now, both these helmets are dedicated to being developed as high-performing, high-quality lids with the goals of exceeding all international safety standards that were put upon them. Now, the main differences is that Arai uses traditional craftsmanship and handcrafted lids with a hint of technology, whereas Shoei is always at the forefront of using the most modern engineering techniques and modern technology techniques as well. Now, with that little history lesson out the way, we move on to the safety standards these two helmets must adhere to, which is ECE 2206. Primarily the tests are done on the shell and its retention system, but with this new modern update they actually test the modular helmets in the up position as well as the sun visors. In the previous testing they only tested the HIC test, which is the head injury criterion. This is a linear and translational test, so when you drop the helmet onto an anvil. Now, in this new standard, they've incorporated the BRIC test, which is the brain injury criterion test, which tests the rotational impact forces against the helmet. If you want to learn more about the ECE 2206, we have a dedicated video up in this tag up here. Click onto that after you've watched this video. Let's have a closer look at each of these shells individually. So starting off with the Arai Quantic, Arai has always been renowned for its rounder shell sizes, as they believe it to be the safest shape for a helmet. Now, Arai does recognize that absorbing impact energy is important, but they would much prefer to mitigate or minimize that impact energy in the first place. So by doing this, they have a thing called glancing off or sliding the shell. Glancing off is the ability to slide off an object to minimize impact energy directly into the helmet and stop it from sliding or snagging on an obstacle. Now, for the EPS liner, it is a bit bulkier than that on the Shoei, purely because of this hard shell on the outside that's built up of super fibers, which is what they say is 30% stronger than the usual fiberglass that you would get on a helmet. So on the inside, the EPS liner is a softer EPS liner. It is one whole mold, so makes it quite difficult to install within the helmet, and this is why Arai have only 5 people in their whole company that are allowed to install these EPS liners on the inside. Now, the EPS liner is a multi-density EPS liner with a softer liner on the inside to counteract the harder shell on the outside, which does mean that these shells are a bit bulkier than that on the Shoei. Now, not everyone likes the rounder, more bulkier shell sizes that Arai produce, so Shoei comes in its place to develop something that's a little bit sleeker and a little bit more aerodynamic. By doing this, in order to do this, their shells are an elasticated shell, as they believe the impact energy would be absorbed in a larger area and disperse it across the whole of the shell. This means they can have a thinner EPS liner on the inside, which is in fact actually harder than that on the Arai Quantic, with a softer layer towards the crown of your head so that your head can still absorb some of that impact energy as well. Now, when it comes to the build of the shell, it is an interwoven, interlaid fiberglass build with organic fibers and resin. This builds their Shoei proprietary multiply matrix AIM and AIM Plus. What that means is you basically get a lightweight yet durable and strong helmet, and they're actually at the forefront of developing the most amount of shells for our heads to give us that maximum variety to fit all our head sizes. Now, what I've said so far, don't let that put you off of one helmet or the other. Make sure to test it out yourself. But moving on, in its simplest form, the Arai Quantic has a harder outer shell with a softer yet thicker inner EPS liner, and Shoei goes for an elasticated shell to absorb that impact energy with a harder, thinner EPS liner on the inside. Now, needless to say, both these manufacturers do their best in order to make sure that the spot checks on these helmets are thoroughly gone through, with Arai actually having different people making markings on the inside of their hard shells to allow them to know that if who it's gone through, and Shoei says that it goes through 25 people before reaching one helmet for us riders to purchase. Now moving on to the overall features of each of these individual helmets, starting off with the Shoei NXR2. This is coming in at around £449.99 pounds RRP. And let's talk about the features of the helmet itself. So the visor has a central locking tab in the middle here, and has different indented positioning points for your helmet, so you can have it in varying positions as well. Now straight out the box, it comes with the PINLOCK 120, so this visor is PINLOCK ready. You can interchange these with other Shoei helmets like the XSPR Pro and the X Spirit if you wanted to. So if you had a dark tinted visor on the other helmet, you can put it on this one. Now the visor system on these helmets, on Shoei helmets in general, are super quick and easy with just the pull tabs on the sides here, making sure that these pins are positioned downwards. You just push on the tab here, pull forwards, and you pop that side out as well as the other side. Nice, quick and easy. And then for the reinstallation, you just, what I like to do in fact is palm it slightly and just kind of guide it into its position there, making sure it reaches its pins. So not having a sun visor isn't an issue because that process is far quicker than quite a lot of other helmets. Now the ventilation, you have one by the chin here, one on the top of the crown and two on the sides here. Now this can be a bit fiddly if you have just using your hands, so with the gloves I doubt it will be an issue itself. On the previous version of the Shoei NXR, they used to have a closure system on the back here for the vent, so you can have it in different positions, whereas now in the NXR2 they got rid of that. But do you really need it? Unless you're going 30 miles backwards, you won't need to close those vents for the exhaust. Now on the inside with both of these helmets, they have a double D-ring closure system, which as we know is probably the safest retention system to have on a helmet. With the new ECE 2206 standards, they all come now with a EQRS, which is the emergency quick release system. So you pull on these red tabs to release them quickly in the case that you have an off, so the medics can take it off your head without damaging your head. Now previously they did have an integrated comm system that you can attach to the Shoei, but instead they got rid of that and instead put a additional padding on the side. What this means is that you can't actually have a clip-in comm system for your like Cardo, your Senas and your interphones. You would actually need to have an adhesive tab to put your intercom system onto this helmet, but that's not a big issue either way, as with the new more modern helmets they have a flatter surface for the comm system to have an adhesive touch to. So that makes up the Shoei NXR2. Now let's move on to the Arai Quantic. This helmet starts at £499, so it is a little bit more expensive than the Shoei NXR2, but don't let that stop you from considering this helmet as an option. Now, when it comes to the visor system, it does have a PINLOCK 120 straight out the box, similarly to the Shoei NXR2, and Arai have this bespoke venting system at the top of the visor as well. This visor is interchangeable with other visors that are available for different shells that Arai produce, such as the one that I use, the Debut V. This has a Vast V Max Vision visor that's interchangeable with that. So my smoke tint visor could fit this Arai Quantic if I wanted to. Now for the closure system on the visor, it is towards the left hand side, so you would have to access it with your left hand, which may make it a bit difficult when you're on the move or at a stoplight. Now to close that vent there, we'll move on to the venting system of this helmet. So you have a ventilation vent at the front here by the chin. You also have this new 3D logo Arai vent at the top of the helmet, as well as two side helmets that are quick and easy to use. Unlike the Shoei NXR2, you can actually close the exhaust if you wanted to behind this amazing aerodynamically beautiful, I would say, spoiler that you can get on the Arai Quantic. So you have three different positions on this at the exhaust. So you have fully closed, half open and completely open on the back there. Now let's move on to how to actually take out the visor. So in order to take out the visor, you open that tab there, you push the pin all the way back to open the side panel on either side, and then that should release this visor. All you have to do now is move it downwards so it goes into these little grooves, these red dots. Kind of hard to miss, you'll see them yourself. And then just pull the visor outwards like that. Now for the reinstallation, what I like to do is I'll palm it myself in order to get it in the right position. So you get it into those red little disc bits, push this in sideways like that, and then you lift it up all the way like that. Once you hear that click, this is where you put the side panels back onto the helmet by clicking them on like so, and then you can close the visor again. So yes, it is a bit longer in terms of the process of changing the visor, but don't let that dishearten you from getting this Arai Quantic. Now, when it comes to the ventilation as well, I forgot to mention that at the back here there is an exhaust at the bottom, so you can extract the air going through the helmet. And on the back here you have this mesh vents as well, for the air to go out of. If I haven't mentioned it already, the comfort liner in these helmets are bar none the best comfort liners that I've ever felt against my cheeks and my head. And they are interchangeable for different variations if you so chose to. Now let's move on to the comparisons of both helmets. So now comparing both of these helmets to each other in their features, the Shoei does have a lighter weight as compared to the Arai Quantic, coming in at 1300 grams around there, whereas the Arai Quantic is 1500 grams. And that's purely down to the fact that this is an elasticated shell with a thinner EPS liner, and with the NXR2 it's hard to beat. The Shoei has always made the NXR2 to be one of the lightest helmets available in the range of all helmets across the board. Now, when it comes to their comfort liners, I believe that the Arai Quantic has a nicer comfort liner on the inside, and you can interchange it for other different head sizes that you may have. So if you have a round oval like myself, you can get pads for that, intermediate oval or a long oval head shape. Now, with that being said, Shoei offers you the ability to change your pads at no extra cost here at Infinity. So if you decided to change the comfort liner within the Shoei NXR2, what would happen is we would keep the original padding and give you the new padding to go into that Shoei helmet at no extra cost. So you'd be saving yourself a little bit of money there. Whereas on the Arai Quantic, you would have to buy extra, and that costs about 120 for the crown and the cheek pads. Okay. Now, moving on to the visor systems. When you're on the move, I find that the Shoei NXR2 would be much easier to use as it has that central tab here. Whereas on the Arai, you would have to do a bit of pre-planning in order to open your visor before reaching the stoplights. But I've gotten used to it, and so will you. If you have those big old gloves, you can literally just pull on it and pull outwards and up, and that's nice and easy. One thing that the Arai does have over the Shoei is that if you wanted to get a sun visor instead of a tint, you can get an attachment to go over the top of the visor itself, whereas on the Shoei, you can't. And when it comes to the comm system, you'll find it much easier to find one to fit the Arai, as it has this flatter spot on the side, but you can also clip it in, whereas on the Shoei, you can't do that. Now, it really is just coming down to what your preferences are, and for you to actually come down to an Infinity store to try and test out these shells for yourself. On the topic of shells, Shoei, before I forget to mention, has 5 different shell sizes as compared to the Arai Quantic with only 3. Right, so Shoei from XS to small has its own shell category, and then medium and large have its own dedicated shell sizes. XL to 2XL is in its own bracket again, making that 4th shell size, and then now newly incorporated 3XL having its own shell size as well. So you do get a variety of shell sizes with the Shoei NXR2, but with the Arai Quantic, with only having 3, you can change the interior padding to fit your head the best. I'll leave that with you guys to decide which one out of the 2 that you like the most. Leave a comment down below, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and hope you ride safe, and see you all soon.